of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again are my co-hosts Richie O'Leary and Alec Crouthamel. Special guest on the show today is Max Torres. He is the Oregon football and recruiting reporter for Scoop Duck On3. We're going to talk everything Rutgers, Oregon in this matchup for Saturday night. Max, man, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Excited to be here and talk about this week's game.
Yeah, our sponsor FanDuel has this one at a 17.5-point line that initially opened up at 15.5 points. It is now set as an over-under of 60.5. So our sponsor FanDuel, if you want to get in on any action for that game, that is kind of what we're looking at right now. And Max, Oregon has, come into this season, super high expectations. You guys handled the whiteout. You kind of started the beginning of the end for James Franklin this season. And last week, I think a lot of people thought Indiana was going to kind of have their wake-up call because they've just had such a good season as well. It's such a strong 2-year stretch for an Indiana team. But I was shocked when I saw the final score. I wasn't able to watch it in real time. But what did Indiana do so well against this vaunted Ducks offense and defense?
I think when you look at what Indiana did well, it really has to start with their game plan defensively for Oregon because – I mean, on the other side of the ball, like Fernando Mendoza played a good game, and so did Elijah Surratt. But like, I don't think that loss is on the Oregon defense. It really was on the Oregon offense, especially when you look at 7 of the points coming from the defense. When Brendan Finney Jr. had a pick 6, like you're at home, you're coming off a bye week. Like, you have to put out a better performance than that. So I think really with the defense, I think they did a great job just disguising what they were doing. They used a lot of simulated pressures and threw a lot of different things at Dante Moore, which clearly rattled him. And he had his worst outing as a Duck, but he's only had 6 starts. So you have a limited sample size here for Dante Moore and Eugene. But yeah, I think it really just comes down to that and just how rattled he was. And he didn't really find a rhythm all day. The Ducks went away from the run for whatever reason against Indiana when it was working. I think I saw someone say they only ran the ball 9 times in the second half compared to 21 times in the first half. So I think Indiana really just, delivered the opening punch to Oregon and just took everything that they had in stride. And, credit to them and Kurt Cignetti because he's a hell of a coach.
And I guess looking at kind of as a whole, this is an Oregon team. They have, one of the better head coaches in the country, 2 of the more well-received coordinators in the country as well. Coming into the season, ranked in the top 10, is this kind of like a national championship or bust when you look at the guys that they brought in, Dante Moore starting, things like that? Kind of how have they performed relative to expectations this year?
I think that's definitely a reasonable question. I didn't find myself in the natty or bust crowd, especially when you look at it in the context of the expanded playoff, because for Oregon, they've already been to the playoff, but it was before this last year, it was the inaugural playoff when it was only 4 teams, and so much has changed, not only at Oregon, but in the sport at large. So for me, I don't think it was a national championship or bust. I still don't think it's national championship or bust. I think it's about getting back to the playoff and winning a playoff game, because winning the playoff game and winning the national championship are 2 totally different things. And you have to at least win 1 playoff game to get to the national championship. And Oregon hasn't done that since 2014. So I think relative to preseason expectations, the Ducks are performing fairly well. My kind of gauge on the year was 10-2 for them in the regular season. I didn't think that this most recent Indiana game was going to be a highly anticipated top 10 matchup, but look at what they got. We kind of had a feeling that the whiteout game was going to be a big one, and really liked what we saw from Oregon in that one. But I think that they've been pretty good as far as if you just take out the Indiana game. I think that they were performing to expectations. I think they were top 10 in both scoring, offense, and defense. But of course, like any team, you still have some areas that you can try to clean up.
Max injury report. I know there's not a ton of dudes that are out for Oregon, at least last week. I don't know if that's changed since the Indiana game, but anyone missing significantly that we should know about?
No, the Ducks are pretty healthy right now. I mean, the only injury update that we got recently was that one of Oregon's veteran wide receivers, Kyler Casper, is going to be out for the season. He's had a just horrible run of injuries since he got to Oregon, but he was kind of that jump ball red zone target for Dante Moore. That's what kind of people build him as. He's 6'5", 6'6", north of 200 pounds, but he just hasn't put it together after reclassifying from 2023 to 2022. And the only other note that I would maybe throw out there is that the Ducks have one of their true freshman corners, Dorian Brew, with the team practicing again after missing a little bit of time. So nothing new really on the injury front, at least as far as starters are concerned for the Ducks.
And transitioning into the offense, kind of talk from like a high level of like, what are the philosophies that Oregon tries to kind of, play out in their game plans and the way that they play the game. And, what are some of like the strengths and weaknesses of this Oregon offense generally?
That's a great question, because if you're starting with a look at Oregon's offensive identity, I don't really know that they have a really concrete one right now. And that was one of the talking points coming out of this loss to Indiana. I kind of had always viewed Oregon as a run first team. And I think that they would like to be, and maybe still are, but still really balanced, really good at running the ball, really good at passing the ball. I think one of the things that we've learned from Oregon so far this season is that they're better at run blocking than they are at pass blocking. And with that, you would think that they would lean into the run when they need to kind of get things going, but they went away from that in the Indiana game, which was probably one of the biggest head scratchers on offense. I know that Will Stein, a key pillar of his offensive philosophy when he got hired at Oregon, was feeding the studs. Again, went away from that in the Indiana game. It felt like Ja'Cory Moore and Kenyon Sadiq had a combined, I think, 7 total touches. De'Aaron Hill Jr., the electrifying true freshman running back, only touched the ball 3 times. So that was something that we just saw Oregon get away from in the game, is their best players just didn't touch the ball very much. And I think part of that was because of the struggles that Dante Moore had. And then we knew coming out of that Penn State game that the Ducks were vulnerable at the edges with the tackles. And, Alex Harkey had a bit of a tough day at right tackle, and that was something that Indiana looked to exploit. So I think that the Ducks have all the talent in the world. I mean, some people think that Kenyon Sadiq is the best tight end in college football, but we just haven't seen him featured super heavily lately. I think one of the bright spots has been Jordan Davison, a true freshman running back out from Mater Dei in Southern California. He's been incredibly effective. Primarily was used as a goal line guy, short yardage guy, but he's taken on an expanded role, it looks like. And then Gary Bryant Jr., the most experienced wideout on the team, has really bounced back after battling injuries as well.
Now, before we get into the quarterback, just one note on the coordinator. Will Stein has a bit of a subsect in Rutgers football lore as the quarterback who was so bad he got benched for one-legged Teddy Bridgewater in 2012, and Rutgers had a chance to win the Big East. So Rutgers fans already aren't very, very happy with Will Stein from that past. But looking at Dante Moore at quarterback, comes in from UCLA as a 5-star after his true freshman year. Obviously sits a redshirt year behind Dylan Gabriel, now in the NFL. I guess, how has he handled the expectations of being that next guy up at Oregon as the starting quarterback? And he got off to a really hot start, a little bit of buzz in the draft. How do you feel like he's managing that, and what does the defense have to look out for with him?
I think he's managing it really well. If you just listen to Dante in a press conference, you can tell that he's got that maturity, and he speaks like somebody who's already in the NFL. Maybe not as metaphorical as a Jalen Hurts if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan. Those press conferences are pretty interesting to watch, but he is really kind of Mr. Cool, calm, and collected. I think that was one of the biggest things that we saw from him in the whiteout, was just the poise that he carried himself with. Has all the arm talent in the world, is more of a threat with his legs than I think he probably gets credit for. And that is something that I'm maybe going to be looking for this week in the Rutgers game after Damon Williams ran for almost 140 yards against the Scarlet Knights last week. He's not the athlete that Damon Williams is. That's not what I'm trying to say, but he's a really well-rounded quarterback, and he can hurt you with his legs if you let him. So I'm just going to be excited, as I'm sure the rest of the Duck fan base is, to see how he responds to kind of getting punched in the mouth and experiencing his first real adversity. We were kind of talking about that in the Northwestern game when they came out sluggish on the road, and then again in the Penn State game with how the offense kind of had its ups and downs in that one. But now we got some real adversity when he just got his I'm trying to think how to say this in a podcast appropriate way. He got his butt kicked in that Indiana game. So I'm just going to be interested to see how he responds, because, as the saying goes, the team goes with the quarterback, and they'll go as far as he can take them. So it'll be a big learning moment for Dante.
Yeah, this is the time of the pod where all the Rutgers fans can take a shot because we're dealing with another Russian quarterback. Rutgers has not historically fared well against mobile quarterbacks, so some heartburn already starting in my chest. Yeah, I noticed that like Dante Moore's had a pretty clean sheet this whole season. I think he was sacked one time before the Oregon game. He got sacked, I think, 6 times on Saturday through 2 fourth-quarter interceptions. Was that just like frustration that had built up, or do you think like what do you kind of point to for the reason that Indiana was able to really kind of get the best of Dante Moore for the first time really as an Oregon Duck?
Yeah, I think it was a combo of the offensive line and Dante. Like, I think the Hoosiers exploited, some of the weaknesses on the Oregon offensive line, and then Dante also wasn't seeing things very well, and his timing was off, and he was holding onto the ball too long and not getting rid of it. And I think for me, like, I walked away from that game just feeling like Dante kind of grew up a little bit. Like, you saw that he is a young quarterback, which I think was just surprising to see, because going from the Penn State game to that game at home, no less, were just two totally polar opposite performances. So I think that that's kind of what I attribute it to. I don't think that this year's offensive line is as good as last year's offensive line was for Oregon. Still a good group, but it definitely had me, at least evaluating a little bit, like what is the ceiling for this offensive line, and is Alec Terry and the rest of that offensive line staff maybe going to ask themselves the question, like, hey, do we need to maybe make an adjustment on the right side of the line between Alex Harkey at tackle and Dave Iuli at right guard? Because we haven't seen Matt Bedford, the former Indiana transfer. We haven't seen him play at all. And then the Ducks have also been bringing in that 6-man Janoris Wilson as an extra tackle when they kind of go into their jumbo spots. And he hasn't played very much at Oregon. So maybe they try to switch things up and throw some new blood in there.
First things first. You said podcast appropriate. We are not podcast appropriate. Maybe it's just me specifically that curses a lot on the pod, but you are more than welcome to join us in the cursing when it's bound to happen to this point. So
that might be just a you thing, Richie. You might be alone on that one.
It is a little bit, but that's not the point. It's Jersey. It's part of your language over here, basically. Anyway, you guys have a hell of a running game. You were just mentioning it before, how they kind of shied away from it against Indiana, but I'm looking at the numbers now, like 1, 2, 3, 4 backs that are all really weapons. Almost everyone there except Jordan Davison's averaging over 5 yards per carry. Jordan Davison's also leading your team in touchdowns, though. So just talk to me about this run game. Is it just to kind of ride the hot hand moment, or?
Well, that's the thing. I think that there have been times when they've had the hot hand, but they've been rotating so many running backs that the hot hand gets taken out of the game sometimes. Maybe in the spirit of keeping fresh legs or whatever it might be. Jordan Davison had the hot hand against Indiana, and he got taken out of the game, and we saw the offense kind of sputter a little bit. I do wonder if this is kind of the game where they try to chop down that rotation a little bit, because Jordan Davison and D.R. Hill, the true freshman phenoms at Oregon in the backfield, they have very different body types. Jordan Davison is listed at 6 foot, 236 pounds. I don't know if he's quite that heavy, but he's definitely carrying a lot more weight than D.R. Hill is, who's closer to 5'10", 5'11", and maybe a little bit south of 200 possibly. And he's kind of that more electrifying back. Not to say that Jordan Davison is slow, because he definitely isn't, but I think that they've maybe been overcomplicating the run game a little bit, and they've still put up some pretty gaudy numbers. But Noah Whittington and Jaden Lamar are by far and away the better pass protectors of the two. But the thing is, Jaden Lamar just he doesn't have that pop. He doesn't have that juice that the rest of the running backs in this room maybe do, and it takes him a bit longer to get the ball going, I should say, himself. But because he is good at pass protection, he has been on the field quite a bit. So I'm going to be interested to see how this running back rotation shakes out on the road this week.
So the pass catcher room has a ton of talent. From an NFL draft perspective, there's 2 guys that really stand out to me, both for this upcoming draft and in the future. You already mentioned Kenyon Sadiq, the true junior, tight end, kind of all-world level talent. And then DeCorian Moore, the true freshman, former 5-star. He's certainly lived up to that rating and more in his 6 games of playing college football so far. Talk a little bit about both of those guys, kind of what makes them stand out as players, and kind of anyone else to look out for in the pass game.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sorry, Mike. You said DeCorian and Malik Benson?
Sorry, DeCorian and Kenyon Sadiq.
DeCorian and Kenyon Sadiq. Okay, sorry. I had a little brain fart on my end. Let's start with DeCorian because this feels like, compared to – in my time covering the Ducks, I don't think I've seen as many true freshmen play this soon in their careers, and it's made it a lot of fun. So DeCorian Moore, I mean, just anything you want a wide receiver to do, he can do it. Tremendous hands, tremendous speed, burst, elusiveness, side to side lateral movement and agility. He is, I mean, just everything I think you're looking for in a wide receiver. And someone that you would hope is going to get a little bit more involved this week after the Ducks sputtered a bit last weekend. So he has been everything that Ducks fans could have expected. They've had some really talented receivers come through Eugene from a recruiting standpoint, but they haven't been able to find their way onto the field for whatever reason. So I think this is definitely a good development if you're a Duck fan to see DeCorian doing what he's doing. And then Kenyon Sadiq has been a tremendous story to follow. Not really an under-the-radar recruit. I believe he was a top 150 caliber player in the class of 2023, but he's from Idaho. And when you think of high-level football players, you don't really think of Idaho. No slight to Idaho. I got family in Idaho and some great people out there. But I don't think expectations were very high when Kenyon Sadiq, got to Oregon. He was maybe even more of a jumbo wide receiver tight end hybrid that you could kind of move around a lot. And the big question around him was like, hey, this guy needs to put on some weight. Is he going to be able to kind of hold his own as an inline blocker? And then now you fast forward to 2025, and he is just routinely pile driving defenders into the ground. I didn't really think that he was 100% in that Indiana game, and maybe that was kind of what we can attribute the two receptions to. But I also do wonder, you guys, if Will Stein and the rest of the offensive staff are like, hey, we're just really having problems blocking these guys, so we need Kenyon to be used to protect and give some time for Dante or pave the way for some of these running backs. But Kenyon Sadiq is absolutely an athletic freak any way you want to slice it. He is someone that when he's playing at his best, then Oregon's playing at their best, and I hope we see a lot more of him this weekend.
Now, you've kind of touched on this already with the protection in terms of the offensive line, better run blocking than pass blocking. This is an Oregon program that's put a lot of offensive linemen in the NFL. I guess, how do you feel like this unit matches up against a Rutgers defensive line that has been much maligned for its struggles in getting in the backfield and putting pressure on the quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a get-right game maybe for this Oregon offensive line. They have passed the test as far as maybe being great communicators. That was one thing that I think had to be there in the win against Penn State, with Poncho Lalaulu being someone who led the way as the team's center and went with the silent snap count and all of that. He probably looks like the most promising draft prospect from the offensive line, aside from Emmanuel Pregnon, who came over from USC. So I would probably say that those are the top two offensive linemen for the Ducks. The left side of the line is probably stronger than the right side of the line. But if Dante Moore can have some time, like you said, Alec, with Rutgers maybe struggling to get in the backfield and apply some pressure, he will make you pay because he's got some great receivers to throw to, even some running backs out of the backfield as well. I'm going to be looking for Dante Moore to hopefully, navigate that pressure a little bit more. Because coming into the season, I mean, I was hearing great things about just his vision and how well he did in fall camp with that. So I would say that definitely bodes well for Oregon, but they definitely have some pressure on them to show up and get right.
Before we even get to defense, and we will get there, I have one last question about offense. It has to do with Rutgers, kind of. Drew Merringer, you just mentioned he might have the best tight end in college football. He's helped develop him. How? I need to know how, because this guy was at Rutgers. He was arguably the worst OC of all time. Mind you, you can't hire a 28-year-old, 27-year-old as an offensive coordinator and think it's going to be successful.
Gosh, I mean, yeah, that's a tough one to answer because, I'm not the coach that's in there developing with him. But I think a big part of it had to do with Kenyon, getting his body right in the weight room. You're not going to go anywhere if you're getting thrown around at the tight end, especially because you have to be able to block linemen and linebackers. And Kenyon is just absolutely, a physical freak. He's like 6'3", 245, 250. So he's gotten his body right. And I think that the staff has kind of eased him into a larger role. One of the crazier things, like with all the hype that he had this year, I think he only started one, if not maybe no games last year for Oregon. So like they were really he was able to kind of sit behind some pretty talented tight ends, and Terrence Ferguson, who's on the Rams now, and Patrick Herbert as well. I want to say he was with the Jags, but I don't know if he is anymore, just because he was one of those more borderline guys. So he's learned from some pretty talented tight ends, and I think that he's just really gotten his mind around the playbook, and he's made the most of his opportunities. So he's got a tremendous mentality and work ethic, and he's someone that the Ducks are really happy to have in Eugene.
But you're also the recruiting guy over at Scoop Duck. So is he a good recruiter? I know it's not. I shouldn't say it's easy, but it's not very hard to recruit at Oregon, I feel like.
No, that's a great question. I mean, I think that up until like the past couple of cycles, I think that some people had their questions about Drew Maringer and kind of what he was able to do as a recruiter and talent acquirer. But he has really, I think, like Kenyon's obviously his crown jewel since he's been at Oregon and what he's been able to do. Obviously worked with Terrence Ferguson and sent him off to the NFL, but he's got some really scary guys kind of waiting in the wings here. He hasn't played much this year, but Roger Saliapaga, I think, is one that is very interesting. I think that was the 2024 class for Oregon out of the state of Utah, where the Ducks found the Sewell brothers a couple years ago. And then looking at Kendra Harrison in the 2026 class, a five-star dual sport guy, 6'7", 250 out of North Carolina. He's also going to play basketball for Oregon. So he's I think that people had their questions, and there were those Drew Maringer skeptics in the recruiting world, but he's certainly I think turned a corner, and they are happy to have his Texas ties on the staff.
So he's still average. Check.
Not what I said.
I'm just saying. We weren't fans of him. Just put it like that.
All right, let's pivot over to some defense. Tosh Lupoy is the defensive coordinator there. He was a long-time recruiting ace, and I think he never really got a shot for a long time to be a coordinator. Alabama makes him their co-coordinator, defensive coordinator. He wins a national title. He goes to the NFL for a while. Comes back to the college game to be the Oregon DC when Dan Lanning was hired. Talk about what his defensive philosophy is, and just generally talk about the talent level, because you guys have studs at all three levels of the defense. A lot of youth playing for this Oregon team too, which you don't typically see, 4 freshmen starting on a defense this good.
Yeah, Tosh Lupoy has such an interesting story to Oregon, you guys, because he was someone that has kind of bounced around a good amount. I mean, not like an every season kind of a deal, but I was like, God, if Oregon could get this guy, I knew he was one of the biggest names.
He coached everywhere in the area other than Oregon until recently.
Yeah, he was at Cal. He was at Washington. He is from the East Bay in California. Went to a historic program out there in De La Salle. So when Dan Lanning tabbed him as his defensive coordinator, him along with Demetrius Martin, who has been a career journeyman as far as coaching goes, I was like, oh man, this feels like perfect timing. Like he's finally in Eugene. Like I knew about this guy and all the recruiting, savvy that he had. And he's just, I think he's just about trying to get a lot of really good athletes out there on the field and put you in kind of some defensive mismatches. Having covered the Ducks for a long time, I think just the caliber of athlete that we've seen, he's more of a linebacker edge kind of guy at heart. Like that's his position that he focuses on when he's not overseeing the entire defense, because you have to look at, obviously Dan Lanning being a defensive guy as well. He's brought in some really talented guys. I mean, Mateo Uiagalelei in the 2023 class, he's kind of the crown jewel of the Tosh Lupoy era, you could say, at Oregon. Played right away. Tatum Tuioti as well. He's Tony Tuioti's son, one of 4 that are playing college football right now. That's Oregon's defensive line coach. Those are 2 really talented guys holding down the edges for Oregon. And then you have Nasir Wyatt, who's a true freshman that's been getting featured more heavily. A little bit undersized, but crazy motor and twitch off the edge there. So there's a lot of really talented guys on this defense. I think that you could say it's probably an aggressive defense, but maybe one that likes to disguise things a little bit with simulated pressures and stunts. This defense is one that has been bringing in some SEC caliber bodies along the defensive line. And now this year, we're kind of seeing them getting thrusted into bigger roles, but you aren't without experience, right? You have Amari Washington, who's been kind of a homegrown guy, right, from Arizona, originally from Michigan. And then you have Bear Alexander, who comes over from USC. So there's a lot of really, really talented guys on this year's team. You talk about true freshmen or freshmen in general, redshirt freshmen as well. Throw in that conversation. Brandon Finney Jr., Ife Obadegwu, Aaron Flowers. All those guys are fairly young and seeing a good amount of playing time here right out of the gate. So it's been solid, but I think that people have a little bit of question about the linebacker play right now.
I guess just to start with the defensive line, you kind of touched on already, Oregon's kind of in the bottom half of the Big Ten when it comes to sacks and tackles for loss. And while that isn't everything, it's certainly a benchmark for how a defensive line is performing. Is that a concern at all, or is it kind of just like you mentioned with the youth on the line? The production will come as they get more experience.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think you look at just some of the teams that Oregon has played, Montana State, run heavy team, Indiana, RPO, quick to intermediate games, not a lot of time for those pass rushers to get home. So I think that, relative to preseason expectations, they've probably underperformed a little bit in that category, but I mean, they've only lost one game, so you're not too concerned about that. They've only had two close ones in Penn State and Indiana. So as we get into the thick of conference play, I'm going to be interested to see if that group can wreak a little bit more havoc in the backfield. I think that one area that I've been keeping an eye out for, we haven't seen them send too many defensive back pressures, and that is something that Tysheem Johnson, the former Ole Miss transfer that the Ducks had at safety last year, he really excelled in that, as did Bennett Williams. I want to say he's with the Packers now, so it's a group that can definitely dial up the pressure, but it's about getting home. Like in that game against Penn State, there were so many times on defense when they had him in 3rd and long, and then Drew Aller just got skinny and escaped out of the pocket there. So I know the Duck fans are hoping they can finish a lot more plays than they have so far.
Linebacker room, you kind of just questioned it a little bit. After just watching limited tape from the Indiana game, blown assignments, confusion, missed tackles almost constantly. Would you say, number one, that's their weakest unit, and that's kind of like if Rutgers had to attack somewhere, it would be right there?
I think so. I think that's kind of where it's at right now after what we've seen through 6 games so far, Richie. They have a really experienced guy in Bryce Betcher, a former walk-on who won the Burlsworth Trophy last year for the top former walk-on in college football. And he's a guy who plays like his hair is on fire. I feel like it's a cliche in the Oregon market to talk about it, but just if people don't know too much about him, he also got selected in the MLB draft, but chose to come back to Oregon for another year. He's an outfielder, tremendous athlete, really good lateral quickness and side-to-side agility, like we've kind of talked about in the past. But he's now had 3 games in a row with 10 or more tackles. He's only had 5 in his career, so it feels like he's kind of finding his stride. But now it's just about, okay, what else do you have in that room? You have Jerry Mixon, cousin of Joe Mixon, who is in that linebacker room as well. He's kind of been a little bit of an answered prayer, I think, for Oregon. Maybe didn't have the best performance against Indiana, but he is kind of the pass coverage guy in that group, and is someone who has tremendous instincts, and he can also make a play with the ball in his hands, as he's gotten a couple of interceptions this year. And then you have Devin Jackson, like probably the most traitsy guy, toolsy guy. Actually, no, those are 2 different things. Most traitsy guy, I'd say, in that room, like just crazy speed. He was kind of one of those freak athletes that they brought in. He's from Nebraska originally, but he hasn't necessarily lived up to expectations. So it's a 3-man rotation right now, and Bryce Betcher basically doesn't come off the field. So I'm going to be interested to see if that group can put their best foot forward on Saturday.
I noticed that on the depth chart, your linebackers are, instead of outside linebacker or weak side, strong side, or middle linebacker, they're listed as Mac and Money. Can you talk about like the differentiation between those 2 positions in this defense?
I wish I had a little bit more to offer in that regard. I'm not quite the X's and O's guy that some other people are in the market. But I mean, they're, yeah, I don't have too much to add there, unfortunately.
No,
I wish I maybe just be honest and keep it rolling than try to dance around it.
I think we'd rather you do that than just make something up. So sorry about the random question there, but
no, you're good. I want to get better and be able to answer that question a bit more effectively, but I don't have that right now.
That's all good, man. Let's talk about this secondary. The depth chart I'm looking at says that you guys have 2 freshmen starting at the outside cornerback position between Brandon Finney Jr., who's a true freshman, and Ife Adegwu, the redshirt freshman. Ogedegwu, sorry about that. You have the big-time transfer in Dylan Thiedemann from Purdue coming in this past offseason. So just talk about the secondary, and where would you kind of rank that in terms of position groups on the team?
Yeah, the secondary was I think a group that had a ton of intrigue going into the offseason because the Ducks lost all 5 of their starters in the secondary last year. And you had a couple of guys that were already on the roster but hadn't played a tremendous amount. But obviously Dylan Thieneman comes in from Purdue, and he's the tone setter in that room. He's a veteran guy. He produced at a high level right when he got to college. And I think that Aaron Flowers has been one of the better developments from this season, because he was an All-American guy coming out of high school out of the state of Texas, but didn't really see the field too much. And because you had experienced guys ahead of him like Kobe Savage, who came over from Kansas State, excuse me. But I mean, Brandon Finney Jr., you can't say enough good things about that kid. He's just been as locked down as you could possibly be. I mean, he's probably a top 5 corner in the sport right now. Just been absolutely locked down, and got his first interception of the year last week against Indiana, and took it to the house for an interception. And I saw someone comment, I think it was on our Scoop Duck message boards, during the game, or like, good thing that he took that to the house, because Oregon's offense would have stalled and had to settle for a field goal. Like, it was that kind of a day for the Ducks. But Ifeoma Badeglu, he's been a pretty solid guy so far, even though he kind of got picked on a little bit in that Indiana game. So I think that the secondary is probably ahead of schedule if you're looking at it big picture. I think the defensive line is, I don't know, it's between the defensive line and the secondary for top position group on the defense, I think. One other guy that I have to talk about is Jaden Kennedy, because he committed to Oregon kind of last minute out of the portal from Ole Miss. I didn't know it was coming, so I got to do a better job on my end tracking that one. But when it happened, I was like, dang, who is this guy? And he was at Ole Miss, he was at Tulane, and that's the connection with Chris Hampton, who's on the Oregon staff. I kind of thought that I think most people, myself included, thought he was going to be this kind of depth piece for Oregon. But I mean, that dude just been everywhere. He's been one of the biggest surprises this season. Not the biggest guy. I'm trying to think what he's listed at. It might be like 5'10", 5'11", 175. I'm going to look at it here on the fly to see what he's listed at, but he has just been tremendous for Oregon. He's all over the field playing that nickel role. He's listed at 5'11", 185. I doubt that he's that big. But yeah, he's been tremendous for Oregon, and I think that a lot of people are surprised by what he's been able to do.
So I did a little bit of research in the meantime. It looks like Oregon's 2 inside linebackers are labeled the Mac and Money. Haven't been able to find a reason for that, but it looks like they're, I guess those are the inside linebackers. And I mean, we talked when we previewed the Iowa game, they had some interesting names. So I don't know why they're called that, but it's pretty interesting. You never know. More you know.
There you go.
All right, prediction time, or
We got to talk some special teams first.
oh, special teams.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, of course.
yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
so looking at Oregon special teams, this is a special teams unit for Rutgers that has struggled in the last few weeks, particularly in Big Ten play. I guess, how has Oregon's special teams looked this year? Is there anything funky that they do, whether in the kicking game, the return game, anything like that? Anything noteworthy from Oregon special teams?
Sure. I think special teams have been solid overall, but maybe you're still a bit of a work in progress right now. I mean, Oregon rolled through their first 4 games, just were not tested at all. So Oregon's transfer punter, James Ferguson Reynolds from Boise State, just kind of got to put his feet up and hang out while the Oregon offense just ripped everybody to shreds. But he's had his number called a little bit more recently, and he's had some awesome plays. I think about his fake punt run against Oregon State. I think it was already out of hand at that point, but they dialed it up for him anyway, and they kind of let him get the snap and then, see what he's seeing out there. And since he's Australian, he kind of has like this rugby style kick where he runs out to the side and then launches it. And I know he was fired up on that one. It was like a 20-yard run, and he did this cool little slide out of bounds. Again, was totally unnecessary, but he was fired up. I interviewed him when he committed to Oregon, and just is an absolute character, awesome human being. But he's been pretty good. He had a play last game where he kind of did this like fake punt, and then he it looked like he was going to do a fake punt play, and then he ended up punting it at the last minute, and it was just an absolute beauty that the Ducks downed at the 2, I think. So we haven't seen a ton of him necessarily, but I think he's been fairly good when he's had his number called. Ducks have been pretty quiet in the return game, which I just think is something that you shouldn't be average at if you're Oregon, because of the playmakers that you can bring to your program. Not every kick is gonna yield a great return, but I do feel like they've kind of been falling short of that mark for a couple years now. The one thing that I think is absolutely worth talking about is Oregon's kicking situation, because it definitely hurt them in the game against Indiana. You have Atticus Sappington, who's a former Oregon State transfer. I think he was 14 for 16 last year, and now he's 8 for 11. He made from 33 and 40 last week, but missed from 36. And that miss was one that really hurt them. It was right before the half. Indiana got the ball out of the half, and after Oregon had a missed kick, Indiana got the ball and then proceeded to just drill a 58-yarder. So it just completely took the wind out of their sails heading into the half. And those are points you got to have in a top 10 matchup. And I know the Oregon fans probably feel like they haven't had a reliable kicker in ever, maybe. But it just goes to show you, those kicks that you think are just gimmies and freebies in the NFL, they are anything but that for a college kicker. And that's definitely the case with Oregon right now.
I mean, Aussie punter, kicking issues sounds eerily familiar. Costing you the game. I mean, all right.
I don't know if I'd say that, but it certainly didn't help them.
Yeah.
Because they lost by 10, but yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I jumped the gun before, but prediction time. FanDuel has the line at 17.5, like Mike said before. It's at 60.5 for the over-under. Cross-country trip for the Ducks. Max, you're the guest, so you take it away.
All right, right on. Well, we had our roundtable predictions over on Scoop Duck, so I'll just roll with that. I have Oregon winning this one 35-17. I feel like I could see Oregon coming a little slow out of the gate for this one. It is a pretty significant road trip all the way out there to New Jersey. Interesting, schedule draw for them, going all the way out to Penn State, then back home, having a bye, and then all the way out there again. But hey, that's life in the new Big Ten, baby. Something that you got to roll with. So I think that Oregon is usually a team that starts fast, but just after what we've seen from them at home, I don't know if I'm banking on a fast start now. I think it'll probably be closer than it needs to be for a good portion of it. But Rutgers is a good team. They got some really good players. I know I liked watching number 0. I can't remember his name, but he's the slot. He's awesome. So I think that Oregon should get this one done, but it maybe won't be a blowout that some people might be expecting.
I'll go next. So Rutgers has done a pretty good job of putting points on the scoreboard this season until last week. They scored a season-low 19 points at Washington. I just can't see a scenario where Rutgers doesn't lose this game by double digits. Oregon's just got too big of an advantage in the trenches, especially on defense. I mean, I know that they kind of struggled against Indiana, but basically everybody struggled against Indiana. Like, look at what Illinois got de-pantsed by Indiana's defensive line, and they just have so many guys that they can come at you in waves. And Oregon's kind of got that same setup along their defensive line. So I'm gonna say that Oregon wins. Let's say 38-23. So Rutgers barely covers, and the over barely hits. So 38-23 is my prediction. Richie, you can go next.
Me? Okay. Yeah, I think speaking of getting de-pantsed, this Rutgers defense might get de-pantsed this weekend. This Oregon offense is just really good. They're really talented. Rutgers can't stop anyone, basically. Add in the fact that I know Dante Moore hasn't been super mobile this season, but he has the capability to be mobile. I think that's going to create a lot of issues for this Rutgers defense. They haven't been able to tackle. They haven't been able to created a couple pressures, I should say. But they haven't been able to really do much. And then the secondary is giving up big play after big play. It's kind of Oregon's MO. So I just have Oregon kind of dominating this one. I think Rutgers might keep it close in the first half, like they have in most of their games. And then the second half is where it completely shits the bed, for lack of a better term. But I am going 42-24 Oregon.
So you got the overhitting and Rutgers not covering there.
Yeah, I think most of the 24 is coming in the first two quarters.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I guess that leaves me. All right, so I'm gonna zag a little bit. I know there's a lot of pessimism. I think Rutgers is going to cover for. There's a reason why I think that. For one, I think the over does go over again. I'll say 42-30. No, that's too much. I'll say 45-31. I'll say. And I'm looking at some of the stats. I've noticed that while Oregon hasn't allowed a ton of possessions to get in the red zone, only 11, which is 8th in the country this year, only 11 red zone possessions on defense. They've actually allowed scores on all 11 of those possessions, which is one of the lower units in the country, 8 touchdowns and 3 field goals. So I think Rutgers might have a bit of at least early on, have a bit of a bounce back game in terms of their conversions in the red zone, things like that, which was a huge struggle against Washington and in the past couple of Big Ten games too. So I think Rutgers keeps this game close, but I agree. I think Oregon is just too athletic. They're too talented on both sides of the ball for Rutgers to keep it within single digits. But I'll go 45-31 because I think they'll have some more success in terms of converting when they need to, especially considering it seems like they're putting a lot of time into it, and it was a huge problem last week.
I just want to also throw the caveat out there that Oregon's only allowed 30 points one time. That was last week. There are other scoring outputs. Penn State, they allowed 24 points in double overtime. Oregon State, they only allowed 7 points. Northwestern, they only allowed 14. Oklahoma State, they only allowed 3. And then Montana State, they allowed 13. So kind of not thinking maybe that Rutgers even scores 23, like I said in my prediction. Oregon's just very, very talented on defense. So I don't know, I just want to throw that caveat out there that if these, Rutgers doesn't score anywhere near any of our predictions, that at least we mentioned it.
Yeah, because that was what stood out to me first. I mean, like I think that I'm trying to give Rutgers some credit here. It's not like they've gotten eviscerated in their losses. Like I just have a hard time seeing them put up 30 points against Oregon, but maybe that's just me.
I think you're probably right. But let's talk a little.
I think through 6 games, I've been conditioned to think that every single one's going to be high scoring.
Hey, it could be. You got to ride with your prediction, man. I don't fault you for it.
Before we let you go, Oregon's obviously made some waves for kind of having almost unlimited resources when it comes to going and acquiring players and retaining players.
Have you heard about the unlimited NIL?
Yeah, what's it like covering a team that can basically give blank checks to players, and is that kind of reputation real? Like, do you think that they kind of do have that Phil Knight Nike money blank check, or is that kind of overblown by people in the media?
I think it's tremendously overblown because, I mean, I don't know if it were true that Oregon had unlimited NIL, then they would never lose a recruit or would seldom lose recruits. But they've had 3 or 4 guys this cycle flip away from them, to programs like USC and BYU, for example. Washington is another one as well. I mean, Oregon can put a bag down, throw a bag around with the best of them, but I really don't think it's unlimited NIL. If it was, I think that you have to be organized and you have to leave money for so many things. You have to, invest in the multi-million-dollar new facility that they have. You have to be able to retain players. You have to be able to acquire players. You have to be able to retain coaches when other jobs come open. So I am by no means saying that Oregon's hurting or lacking for money, but I do not believe that they are unlimited NIL because I've seen too many recruiting battles go away from them when that is maybe a factor.
Going hand in hand with that, being a recruiting guy yourself, how hard does it make it to kind of cover it from a high school level where it seems like Oregon's not involved and then all of a sudden, like, boom, Oregon's involved and they got them. They flipped them.
Yeah, I mean, things move quickly. I mean, even just now, right, with the James Franklin firing, like I interviewed a guy who is committed to Penn State but has, quote unquote, reopened his recruitment. And I'm like, how do those two sentences go together? I don't get it. But at the same time, like it's kind of already been like that. Like you see guys make verbal commitments and then they continue to take visits, and Oregon isn't a school that's going to be like, hey, if you commit to us, you're committed, you're all in, you can't visit any other schools. That they don't like to pressure their recruits in that way. I think they very much look at it from, if you like us, then you'll stick with us or you'll come back. And it's never been better than now to finish in second place. And that's exactly what happened with Dante Moore when he flipped to UCLA. So it's definitely hard to put too much stock into some of these quotes I get in interviews, and it makes it that much more important to know what's going on behind the scenes and have more connections than just the recruit.
Did that so-called recruit happen to have one time been committed to Rutgers?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Interesting.
Just for everyone else's context.
We could read the tea leaves there as well.
You can read the interview on Scoop Duck.
There you go.
Perfect segue there. Max, you've been gracious with your time. Is there anything that you wanted to ask us from a Rutgers perspective before we let you go?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be really interested just to hear from each of you guys if it's not too much to ask. Like, what's your favorite part of covering the Rutgers beat? Because I've only been out to the East Coast like a handful of times, and I'm just so interested, what it's like for you guys.
That's a tough one, honestly. I don't know. We all went to Rutgers, so it's more of like, hey, you're getting to cover the school that you grew up watching, We all grew up in the era where it was like, holy shit, this is like a top 10, 15 Rutgers. Like, wow, this is amazing. And it's nice to cover it from a behind the scenes look and see it like as growing up as one of the idiots that's jumping on the field for the Louisville game before the game's even over, as like a 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid, whatever it was. And now going behind the scenes, talking to that same coach that was there at that same time. Like I have pictures with Greg Schiano when I was a kid. So it's cool to talk to him up close in person. It's not cool when he gets a little upset, but
I was going to say sometimes not so cool.
Yeah. Other than that, it's really fun.
Yeah,
Cool.
A lot of the same reasons for me, and also just the fact that like I really like the stories, like New Jersey, being from New Jersey. It's kind of a one of a kind place. Like having those stories and the recruiting and the team and things like that is really fun to tell.
Plus the press box food is
halftime hot dogs.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
A+.
That's the food at I don't know what the stadium is called, but over at Rutgers.
You don't want to know what it's called. Poor branding on their part.
Yeah. Oh, well, I gotta ask, what is it called there? I gotta look it up.
It's SHI Stadium, and it's just like you're one letter short.
The jokes
of making
write
it real.
themselves.
It's very easy to edit. Yeah.
Dang.
But no, halftime hot dogs are not even the meal. Like they give you a meal before the game, and then halftime they bring out hot dogs, chips, and it's like, all right, kind of like the football type of vibe.
Hey, it's
No
good
beer, no
that
beer,
they take
but-
care of the press, though. I mean,
Yeah.
if I know you've had some rough games to cover, so if that's the case, at least they're taking care of you.
Yep, exactly.
Absolutely. Max, you've been great. You've been very gracious with your time. Tell our listeners where we can find your work and where we can find you on social media.
Right on. I sure appreciate that. Yeah, you can find me anywhere at mtorres sports on all social media platforms. You can listen to my podcast, the Ducks Dish podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch me on the Scoop Duck On3 YouTube channel. And of course, you can read me over there at scoopduck.com with Justin Hopkins doing the latest and greatest in Oregon football and recruiting.
Awesome. Well, thanks once again for joining us. Hopefully you have a pretty good idea of where you'll be potentially making bets on FanDuel this upcoming weekend. And if not, I mean, this game feels like a stay away for me, especially as a Rutgers fan, because I think this could get ugly for the Scarlet Knights, and I hate betting against my team. But it is what it is. Max, thanks so much for joining us once again. For me and Richie and Alec, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast, signing off.